Hey, welcome friends, here I am, a little bit late, but here we are. It is Chat with Matt. It is I have no idea what the date is. I haven't started my computer yet and I just opened it and it's asking for my password, so hang on. Must have done an update, which is not a good sign for how quickly it's going to start. Oh no, it's pretty happy, which is good. Where's Facebook on this? Yep. Everything's changed a bit. I'm getting there. Anyway, it's the 9th of March. I know the date now. It's the 9th of March, 2022. It's my Wednesday morning here in New Zealand. We're here to talk about whatever you might want to talk about, answer some questions, speak to some requests, and facilitate some transformation, help people grow. That's what we love doing, helping you grow, in this instance, just through having a chat and potentially expanding your mind a little bit while holding an energetic space that's more conducive to you, relaxing out of rigidity, relaxing out of belief systems, relaxing out of coping mechanisms of dealing with trauma and discomfort. Hi, Sister Michelle. Hey, Sister Mary. Louise. So yeah, I will put this caveat up. I intend to do this every call, but I don't often do them on these live streams. But what I'm telling you, I'm not intending to indoctrinate you with my truth, right? This is not about what Matt believes is the truth and what you guys believe is not, and you should believe what I believe. That's not what we're here to do. Hey, Sister Audra. I am happy to talk about my opinions and my beliefs, not from the idea that I'm right and other people are wrong, but from the idea of just stimulating your own thought process around different ideas and different narratives, and really loosening up on this idea of right and wrong, because really we all have our own opinions and everyone on this planet has different opinions, everyone. And while it's got very, very popular to group together in collaboration or in unity with people who have the same belief as you on a certain topic, right? And our topics are being dumbed right down to yes or no topics, left versus right topics, right? Red or blue topics. Hey, Sister Susie. So we're being divided, right? There's a conscious effort by those who look after society. And again, this is my belief, right? A conscious belief, a conscious effort to divide society by creating these polarities, you know, Russia or Ukraine. You can only believe in one or the other, right? There's no in between on that, according to the media and how they present it, right? You're either standing with Ukraine or you're a terrorist, basically, Russian sympathizer. That's it, right? There's no looking into the complexities of this issue and what America's been doing and what NATO's been doing over the last, couple of decades to create instability in that region by funding a whole heap of quote-unquote terrorist organizations, for want of a better term, in the Ukraine, right? Neo-Nazi things. So if you're not willing to look into that and you just want to, be manipulated by the media into believing one or the other, right? Vaccine, pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. That's it, right? There's no seeing into what's going on. It's either you believe in this or you don't, right? There's no room, Black Lives Matter or they don't. It's fucking ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but yet it's rather concerning when you look out into society and see that there's a huge majority of people who are easily manipulated on these divided topics and are very quick to choose a side, pledge their allegiance to that side, put their fucking blinkers on, and then, just blindly go down that without looking at any evidence that might create some concern around what they're believing, right? Create some wake up to, hang on, why is the media so belligerent in this? Why it was, there are alarm bells all over the place, right? With how the media is operating at the moment. This use of footage that's not factual, that they're doing it time and time and time again, and yet there's no uproar. The fact that they've been caught out again using false footage and claiming it's in the Ukraine. again, just after they did exactly the same thing with Corona. When Corona broke out, they were using all of this footage in hospitals and images and stuff that wasn't actually current, wasn't actually of coronavirus patients. And yet, just to exemplify and create more fear around their story, right? Never let the truth stand in the way of a good story is an old slogan, but when people watch the news, they trust that they're being shown factual images, and that's not the case. And so it's about time we we looked at that a little bit more carefully, and the people woke up to that and stopped allowing. It's time to fucking boycott mainstream news. Why is it? This is something that's been going through my head, that people have bought into the idea that it's terribly irresponsible to not stay up to date with what's happening in the rest of the world. How did that belief come into play where it's been made a very social rightness to watch the news and to be up to date, quote unquote, keeping you up to date? This is a slogan that you hear on many news channels, keeping you up to date with the latest from around the world. Why do people want to do that? Does it keep them safer to know what's happening on the other side of the world? What do we do as individuals about the potential that Russia's going into the Ukraine and da-da-da-da-da-da? How does it help us to know that? Practically. Certainly doesn't help us psychologically, because huge amounts of people are now in a new, deeper layer of fear. But practically, what can we do about it? Start digging air raid shelters or shit? What? Start being outraged and shouting in the street and telling our politicians to do something about it. We're being manipulated at a very high level here, and this idea that news and current affairs is very, very important is a very fundamental belief to them, being able to manipulate people, being able to create news that very few of us can verify, right? Anywho, I was going to answer the questions that were put in. I just got carried away just for a change. I haven't been here for a while, right? Because last Wednesday I was still on retreat. Was I here the Wednesday before? I probably was. I can't remember. It's been such a blur. We did hold 2 very successful retreats despite the fact of all of this instability. Yeah, so here in New Zealand, as Susie just pointed out, it's a perfect distraction from what's happening with COVID. So in most of the world, COVID's pretty much finished. New Zealand's just going into the crux of Omicron breakout. But still, they're trying to sweep it under the carpet because it's a little bit of a, they've got a bit of egg on their face around all of this. So after all of these, we're already relaxing all of the controls around COVID just when it's getting bad here in New Zealand, because that's what the rest of the world is doing. So it's interesting that all of these control measures were never intended to keep people safe. They were always intended around compliance. And now the people have lost their stomach for compliance. And so it's all getting dropped. It's very, very interesting. Mary Louise said, and we are living in our left brains instead of living in our hearts and trusting our deep soul wisdom. Exactly, and that's the guts of it. And that's what this conspiracy has been around doing. And our whole education system is to prime people to staying left-brained. It is to keep people in the belief that they must analyse facts and figures in order to stay safe and in order to survive and to thrive and to succeed. That's the way of doing the world successfully. It's all through analysis. It's all through knowing. You must know, and if you don't know what to do, then you're in danger. If you don't know what's happening, then you are susceptible, you're dangerous, you're vulnerable. If you don't know what's happening, that's a bad thing. The fact that you can feel what to do in the moment despite not knowing what's happening is, not pointed out to anyone in our education system and in our society in general. So anyway, yes, we ran 2 very successful retreats despite the fact that, lockdowns were, well, not lockdowns, but, all of the COVID stuff and a lot of fear and stuff. It was very, very, very satisfying. 2 of the most satisfying retreats we've ever run, for the very fact that the people who came on were visibly haggard and stressed when they got there, and very, very visibly relaxed and happy and expansive as they left 5 days later. So never has the contrast been so great in what you can help people achieve just by taking them out of society and giving them a good time, a healthy time for 5 days, 4 nights. So that was incredibly, incredibly satisfying despite all of the stress and challenges we had in getting them off the ground and actually getting people there and satisfying everyone's fears that it was going to happen and it was going to be safe and etc. etc. Once they got there, it was amazing. So that was nice. That's what I've been doing. That was the last 2 weeks of February and into early March, and now we're back home looking for a house to buy somewhere, if not 2 places, 2 houses to buy. Anyway, I'm going to answer some questions. So Zena wrote in about the situation that's happening in northern New South Wales with the flooding and the incredible amount of rain, ridiculous amount of rain that has been falling in these areas, which is really interesting that it's been quite concentrated in 2 areas just around Sydney and Brisbane. And this area just south of Brisbane has really, really copped it very, very heavily, and they've had the worst flood by far ever. Floodwaters going 2 meters higher than they've ever gone before, etc. Whole towns, Lismore, etc., getting decimated. Lots of people are missing. Lots of people who live up in the hills around that area. It's quite steep and lush and sort of subtropical rainforesty type area. Was a beautiful area of the place, but a lot of people are still missing. A lot of areas haven't been accessed yet. And interestingly, the Australian government is doing fuck all about it, to be very blunt, right? While they were very quick to dispatch the military to enforce COVID lockdowns when Australia was going through all their COVID lockdowns, and the military was all on the street to keep people safe and locked in their houses, the military has not been dispatched, despite the fact that the death toll is likely to cross over into 1,000, if not more, in this particular instance, and many people are in serious trouble if they don't get help, right? Because this has been going on now for days and days. I'm not quite sure how many days since the flood peaked. I've kind of lost track of that, but there's still a lot of people missing, and a lot of people isolated and cut off. A lot of mudslides have come down houses. So at the moment, it's basically civilians who are rescuing themselves, basically. The police have had and the SES, whatever it is, the State Emergency Services, have put on a very, very minimal effort to get people off the roofs of houses. When all of that was happening, it was mainly civilians in their own boats who rescued most of the people. So it's very interesting what's happening with our governments. It's very interesting what's happening with these situations. Susie wrote, I just saw a video of someone asking for help. The media interviewed him. He said, if you listen to what we actually need, they cut everything he asked for out. They cut everything, maybe. So it is interesting. There seems to be, it's very easy to go into conspiracy theories around these agendas of basically, wiping out these populations of people. See, this area that got wiped out was a historically independent area of free thinkers, people who opted out of society. This is quote unquote the hippie culture from decades ago, in further iterations of people who were not so reliant on the government for everything, who have been heavily wiped out in this and affected in this situation. So very interesting. These sort of areas don't fit into the government and the New World Orders, the World Economic Forums agenda for having, you know, smart cities down the eastern seaboard of Australia and linking it all with rail and having concentrated They want to get rid of these settlements of people who are outliers, who are self-sufficient, who don't, you know, fit that mold of being good little drone workers, doing their bit. So they're not getting any resource, they're not getting any help from the government, and we're really seeing, exactly as Em put out, the grassroots are having to look after themselves right now, and the governments are really showing their true colours, which ultimately is a good thing. I know it seems like, it seems really bad, and of course, hearts go out for all of the people who have lost lives, lost their livelihoods, and are suffering greatly at this time. This is happening across the world in so many different areas where people who don't fit into the agenda are left, you know, to suffer. Look at what's happening in West Papua and, you know, parts of Africa. War have been raging on this planet consistently for a long time. And there are always people being heavily persecuted, and it's heartbreaking to know that, you know, these good conscious people of the West don't give a fuck about these other people if there's no resource to be gained, if there's no benefit to going in, right? So all of this bravado and all of this BS about how we're going in to restore democracy, etc., it's a land grab, it's a resource grab, it's strategic. It's never about compassionately helping people. Never. Our governments have not been operating on that level for a long time, if ever, right, since modern government on this planet, right? Okay, great question. Debbie asked, how does one feel safe with all of this BS going on in the world? You have to dig deeper into your heart and realize the being that you're being. Because if you're trying to stay safe by avoiding all of the problems that could beset your physicality, you are never going to feel safe. If you're trying to feel safe by trusting that there's an authoritarian regime that's looking after your physical safety, you are never going to feel safe, right? Well, you can feel safe, but it's delusionary, right? You can trust the authoritarian regime to look after you, as many of us have done in the past, right? As our you know, the generations before us have for a period of time since the Second World War, etc. It's become very prevalent that, you know, the government has looked like it's got its shit together, and society's been going ahead, and everyone's been just trusting that the banking system and the education system and the health system, etc., has been looking after us. But it's becoming very obvious now to those who have a fucking brain to think that that's not actually the case, right? Those of us who have a little bit more blinkers off and a little bit more open, a little bit more sensitive to the world are seeing how manipulated it all is and how illusory it all is. So we have to, as Mary Louise said, we have to step into our own sovereignty, and that means going beyond just identifying with the physicality, identifying with the personality. We have to trust in our divinity. Now, I know that sounds like, but I don't want to die. I know, I don't want to die either, not just yet, right? But the point is, when you trust, when you go beyond just trying to keep your little self safe from the threats that you see from little self perspective, when you opt into your heart and know that you as a sovereign being, as a spiritual being, are inherently safe no matter what. When you take that perspective, you actually expand into a state of being that allows you to be intuitively guided as to how to stay safe in moments, right? How to have the best outcome for you. So we have to get out of our head and our little self-thinking in trying to minimize or avoid all of the perceived dangers and all of the perceived problems and challenges and threats that the world is presenting, because a lot of that is being manipulated in how it's being presented to us. So it's very hard for our little self to weed out the truth from the bullshit, because let's face it, you know, the media and everything that's being projected our way is easily manipulated by various forces or influences. So the only way to really relax into trusting the world is to take a more expansive perspective of it, and to trust that you as the being is always going to safe, and every other being is always safe as well. These people who are dying in all these horrific ways, whether they're civilians in the Ukraine, whether they are the indigenous people of West Papua, whether they are the people of the Nimbin region and Lismore region and this, northern New South Wales region of Australia. It doesn't matter who the people are and how they are coming into suffering or death or some sort of, grief and hardship. Them as a soul is fine. They're going through experiences that have the opportunity to be beneficial for them. Now, that doesn't mean that we're non-compassionate. That doesn't mean that we do nothing. Of course, we have to follow our heart and do what feel. We don't have to. It's beneficial for us. There's an opportunity for us to follow our heart and help where we feel to help, because that is part of us expressing ourselves as a divine being. Right. But at the same point in time, it doesn't help for us to get all contracted and stressed and worried about what we have no influence over and what we can't actually do. We each have, in a human body, we have a limited capacity to what we can physically do. We all have a limited capacity to what we can financially do. We all have limited capacity as to how much energy we can actually pull through a physical body. These are limitations that we have, at least currently, and we have to honor that, and we have to let go of this guilt, shame, and fear that we're not doing enough and that we can't keep ourselves safe and we can't keep the people we love safe. We never have been able to keep ourselves and others safe. We've never had control of the universe. We're not supposed to, right? We're here to work within the universe, and of course we have influence, and we are much more influential when we are centered, when we are confident in ourselves, not brashly egoic, confident that I can control the world, but confident in the fact that we don't need to control anything, that we basically are a vibration and we are living ourselves as a representation, as an expression of our divinity. Definitely Zena's request was that we could all, would you be willing to direct some collective support and healing energies towards these affected areas and helping people impacted there? Yes, of course, and I have been for several days since I was really aware of the level of it. I have several Facebook friends, and I have physical friends in that area. I have a lot of my friends from my yoga ashram days who live up there now, and I am very concerned for their safety because and their well-being on a physical level, right? And I am definitely holding them and others in my heart to help them go through whatever they're going through, because these are dear people to me who I spent several years with in close communion, right? Brothers in arms. Brothers in arms, we weren't in arms, but dealing with the trials and tribulations of intense spiritual growth, living in ashrams and etc. So, but yes, it is concerning. It is concerning, and what's concerning is how much of this was influenced by weather manipulation. I know that sounds like a fucking massive conspiracy that no one really wants to believe, that our governments and various scientific organisations are manipulating our weather. But as far as I can tell, they are. So we can just get that out in the open. If you want to label me as a conspiracy theorist for thinking that, then so be it. I don't really care what you think of me. But I'm opening your mind to the idea that it's very, very... there's so much evidence now that what they're doing, and then they keep screaming climate crisis, right, and global warming, which puts people into more and more guilt about the fact that we're using carbon, which honestly, as someone who's been interested in environmental science for a long time and who is a staunch conservationist as well, like I truly believe in conserving our natural beauty and reducing pollution and all the things, but this climate change agenda is just BS to manipulate the population into reducing their capacity and being compliant with this whole idea of smart cities and having everything limited and living under very much more controlled conditions to save the world from carbon, which is Michelle said, I just want to say that at times I think I don't want to be on this planet. Why did I come here? Of course I'm not suicidal, but just want to say this. I don't know why you'd say, of course I'm not suicidal. I think a lot of us who are sensitive are suicidal from time to time. I know I've danced with it plenty of times on this planet. I don't think there's anything... there's a lot of people who feel very guilty about this idea of suicide, and I'm here to point out that we have to let go of that. But, it is easy to get into this idea that I don't want to be here anymore. From an egoic point of view, it just seems too hard. It seems too uncomfortable. But the point is, you are. And asking why did I come here, I ask those questions, and I've seen why I've come here, right? I've got unfinished business. We all have. We're all basically entangled. It wasn't really a choice whether we came back. We've left parts of our energy here. We have, the Earth's, I can talk about the structures and the things, but it doesn't really matter. The point is that we've been going through a series of experiences here on this planet that has entangled us. We all have unfinished business here, and many of us are wrapping a lot of that up in this lifetime. And the energies that are coming through now are giving us the opportunity to expand out of a lot of these entanglements and to heal a lot of these past wounds that have been drawing us back onto the planet, despite the fact that it's been hard to enjoy our experience here on the planet for a long time. It has been very hard to enjoy. As beings of light, coming into this planet over the last few thousand years has been rather torturous. But yet we have, out of not really just a sense of duty, but out of basically, what's the right word? A need to keep working through the stuff that we're doing. And many of us are very committed to holding the light, even in times where darkness is prevailing. And so I'm going to try and get rid of this calendar notification. I did, without actually opening my calendar. Feeling like a victim of being here on the earth isn't going to help. Wanting to go home intensely or wanting to get off the planet doesn't actually help you do any better here on the planet. I miss that, Kelly. Yes, I've wondered if a lot of my travels around the world was to pick up lost soul parts. Yeah, it's interesting, Kelly. I think that is sometimes we are drawn to different parts of the world to complete unfinished business and to make peace with that land that we may have suffered some great trauma at some other time, and to retrieve bits of ourselves that were left along with those traumas. I do believe we are influenced to travel for various reasons, and those are part of it. I am going to answer Jen's question, and I am running out of time. But yeah, so it just, Michelle and others who are in that, and it's very, very easy to fall into it. I know we all get into despair from time to time, where we think, what's the point? Why am I here? What's the point of being here, right? This place seems so painful. We have an opportunity to expand out of the pain. That's it. We're not here to fix things around us. We're not here to necessarily fix the problems, but we're here to make peace with the problems. And in doing so, we actually allow the problems to dissolve, right? The way to fix issues in our own life and the way to fix issues in the world around us is to actually hold space for them in an expansive way. It's to get out of problem-centric thinking and allow ourselves to see the opportunity in what we deem to be a problem or a pain, a discomfort or an issue, a challenge, right? Is to see the opportunity in it. Not that we then need to act and to fix and to, not intellectually. It's to basically relax into an expansive relationship with life itself, with this process, with this process that we can't understand. It is so entangled and so complex that our little minds, of course, cannot figure through the analysis of why all this stuff is happening and why we keep getting pulled into certain situations. We don't need to know why. This is the point. It's to let go of trying to understand why, to let go of trying to intellectualize the world. This is what's kept us trapped. This is what's kept us disempowered, is this idea that we're supposed to intellectually understand the world. And then we feel wrong about ourselves when we can't. We were never going to be able to. This whole idea that you're supposed to do the world with your intellect is one of the biggest conspiracies on the planet, right? That we're educated and trained, and the whole of society is built around this idea of intellectual understanding. And when you can allow yourself to get out of that and come back into your heart and your soul, and to just intuitively move through the world from that space, then everything gets easier. Everything gets easier. But we have to break this old habitual way of doing the world and these shoulds around how we're supposed to understand stuff, right? It's hard to let go of something that we've been trained into for centuries, right? We've been disconnected from our intuitive knowing and pushed into this intellectual way of doing the world. Anyway, I just want to quickly answer what Jen wrote in. Jen wrote, I'm trying to navigate between standing up for what actually works best for me and just going with the flow. Traditionally, I have been so flexible, accommodating, and resilient that the acceptance has been more like tolerance, right? So basically sacrificing your own needs. As I explore more boundaries and standing up for what I want, it feels confusing. Do I believe I can really have what I want? Do I not settle? It feels hard to discern between divine guidance and simply old patterned ways of being. And that's the crux of it, Jen, when we have to have compassion for ourselves, because it is difficult to discern between our internal guidance and that's coming from the divine, from our deeper knowing, our intuitive guidance, and from old emotional pushes and influences. It's hard to tell the difference between habitual influence, right? Wanting to do something because it feels safe in the knowing that we've done it that way before, or our emotions are pushing us to go that direction, or some other force, and our intuition. It's hard to tell. And you don't have to do it perfectly. And it's just a matter of, for me, the way forward is to just consciously be intentional that I'm accessing my intuition, and then being willing to go with it and not going back in hindsight and judging it as wrong. So, you can believe that you can have what you want, but you must also be patient that it's going to take time. You also have to look at why you want what you want. What is influencing the wanting? Right? Is it truly a heart-centered desire, or is it some sort of emotional coping mechanism that's provoking the wanting? So when you're looking at, should I keep pushing for what I want rather than going with the flow with what's presenting, there's a delicate balance to happen there as well. It is confusing because nothing is cut and dry, nothing is black and white, nothing is easy to discern. This is the beauty of this planet, this is the beauty of this life, that it is a very rich tapestry of entangled influences, and it's always going to be that way, and it's not wrong that it's that way. We don't need to break it down and simplify it in order for us to be successful. And the more that we can accept that we never are going to be perfect at making decisions, the more comfortable we're going to be, and the better off we'll make our decisions, right? The more that we can accept that we're never going to be 100% quote unquote happy, always just experiencing joy, the more joy we bring into our life, right? The more that we can accept that this world is always entangled, always tricky, always going to be to a point confusing, the better off we're going to move through the experience, right? Don't look for perfection. Choose to accept. The acceptance comes in not accepting a shitty situation and just allowing yourself to tolerate abuse, right? That's not acceptance. Accept that you're never going to be 100% satisfied with what ensues from a egoic perspective, from an intellectual analysis of the situation. So it is working through the grey areas and allowing yourself to stay intentional, that you keep making progress in directions that are meaningful to you. So finding a deeper degree of ability to be flexible and go with the flow while not compromising too much, wherever that is, right? And that's not, there's no way of really measuring that, but you have to be find satisfaction. You have to find acceptance around what's compromising too much with what you feel is a boundary for you, right? And being willing to work with it in an open way. So there's no real cut and dry answers here, other than keep doing your practice, stay as relaxed as possible, choose not to get contracted in the idea of trying to get it right. Recognize, maintain your awareness that in the past you have been too flexible and too easy, too quick to accommodate the desires of others at the sacrifice of your own. And at the same time, don't let the pendulum swing completely in the other direction where you become so rigidly focused on your own desires that you aren't willing to compromise with others, right? Allow the balance to come back in a more gradual way. Allow yourself to celebrate the victories and allow yourself to relax through the times where you feel that perhaps you could have done better. This is the process, right? So it's a great question. There isn't an easy answer, but hopefully what I've shared will help you basically relax into progressing through that process of allowing all needs to be met in more magical ways, right? As you relax into your heart and allow yourselves to think outside of the box and to get out of trying to measure whether it's this or that. And your guidance will flow through in amongst other influences. It's never one way or the other. It's never divine guidance or emotional influence or intellectual influence or habitual hereditary ancestral influence. All of those are it's all going to be together always, right? And so it's a matter of just adjusting the scales till we get more intuitive influence and we're a little bit more sensitive to what really benefits us. These levels of awareness grow reasonably slowly, and there's no one real practice that just fixes that issue that, oh yeah, now I'm just tuned into my intuition, this is what we're going to do, and I'm sure about it. People who are cocksure are generally in a little bit of delusion. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work for them. I've seen it work time and time again. People who are really sure that they're doing the right thing generally manifest that outcome, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it was the most beneficial thing to do. It just means that they were cocksure about it and they made it happen. Confidence is an immensely powerful thing. But those of us who are more realistic in our understanding of our influences and our guidance tend not to be so sure. It doesn't mean that we can't generate that assuredness and that confidence when it's appropriate, but it's important also that we're not deludedly rigid in that and righteously thinking that our intuitive guidance about what's right is right for everyone and is even right for us in the bigger scheme of the thing. I'll come back to what we were talking about earlier. The more that we can get out of how important this little life is and allow ourselves to basically be in the sandpit having an experience here on this planet, right? To just see it all as an opportunity to experience ourselves as an aspect of the divine playing through a human vessel, then we can relax a little bit more and actually have some awesome times in amongst the challenges, right? Have some awesome times. Anyway, friends, I've talked for longer than I potentially was going to. Much love to you all. I will be back next week. We are back at home, at least for the next 3 or 4 weeks before we go down for another retreat somewhere else, which is happening, I think, the second week of April. But until then, I'm here. So I look forward to serving you, and we'll catch up next week, if not before. If you do have any questions or concerns, if you do feel I can help you in a deeper way, then just feel free to reach out. You know, check out my website or just send me an email. Don't be shy. I'm here to serve. Join our transformation and empowerment support community. That's a great way to get more help from us. You know, the light language events every week and several a month, and different Q&As and another live stream, and there's plenty of ways that we can help you, and it doesn't have to cost that much. So yeah, reach out, don't be shy. Much love. Bye for now.